Who hugs a billionaire's son in the middle of a crowded mall and disappears without leaving a name? Sebastian Roche had built his empire with logic, control, and silence. But none of that helped when his 6-year-old autistic son went missing and was found safe in the arms of a cleaning girl no one noticed. The next day, she was fired, and that night, Sebastian watched the security footage. Once, then again, and again. He didn't know her name, but her hug changed everything. What began as a quiet moment in a hallway became the start of a search that would rewrite all his definitions of family, love, and home. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Sebastian Roche had built an empire on precision. Schedules down to the second. Memos without adjectives. A house without toys, except for one quiet corner where his son's drawings lived in peace. He liked control. It calmed the chaos of a life that had spun too far, too fast, ever since he became a single father. But no amount of control prepares you for the moment your child disappears. It happened on a cold Thursday afternoon in December. The kind of day when the city lights blinked early and everyone wore too many coats and not enough patience. He had taken Dylan, 6 years old, headphones always on, words always few, to the only place that calmed him, the quiet bookstore tucked beside a marble-floored shopping center. Just a quick stop. A new graphic novel. Maybe hot chocolate. Sebastian rarely brought Dylan into crowded places, but the boy had asked. He never asked. Sebastian checked his watch. The line was short. The store was quiet. They had 7 minutes before it got too loud. He reached for his wallet. That's when Dylan let go of his hand. Just like that, gone. It took 3 seconds for Sebastian to realize. 5 more to call his name. But Dylan didn't answer. He never did in moments like these. Words were rare, and panic made them vanish entirely. Sebastian's chest tightened. He scanned the aisles, the checkouts, the glass doors. Nothing. Just noise, people, lights. Too many sounds, too many strangers. He moved fast, each step clipped and steady, though his stomach had already collapsed in on itself. Security was called. Staff alerted. Small boy, brown hoodie, curly hair, green headphones. Doesn't speak much. Time blurred. 2 minutes passed. Then 4. At minute 6, someone pointed toward the corner near the janitor's corridor. "There's a kid sitting on the floor," a woman whispered. "He's not alone." Sebastian didn't walk. He ran. And then he saw them. Dylan sat cross-legged on the tile, knees pulled to his chest, head leaned gently against the shoulder of a girl in a faded blue uniform. Her name tag was crooked. Her sneakers were soaked. One hand rested lightly on the small of his back. The other held a crumpled napkin with what looked like a purple dinosaur sketched in messy ink. She wasn't speaking, just sitting. She didn't even flinch when he arrived, only gave a soft nod, then slowly, gently stood. Dylan didn't cry. He didn't run. He just looked up at his father, blinked, and let himself be guided home. Sebastian turned back to thank the girl. But she was gone. No name, no number, no explanation. Just an empty hallway and a boy whose breathing had returned to calm. That night, after Dylan had eaten exactly half his sandwich and curled up with his sketchpad in bed, Sebastian opened his laptop. He pulled up the mall's internal incident report. As one of the property's largest silent investors, he had access to any security footage he requested. Normally, he wouldn't have bothered. No reason to relive panic. But something about that girl's presence, it haunted him. He clicked the file. There she was. Fuzzy, low resolution, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. The girl in blue, sitting beside his son, saying nothing, doing nothing, just being there. And Dylan, his silent, wary child, leaning into her without hesitation. Sebastian paused the footage, rewound, played again. His son hadn't spoken, but he had trusted, in a way Sebastian hadn't seen in years. He watched it again, and again. Long after midnight, he sat in the stillness of his study, the city glowing outside his window. The footage kept looping. His hand hovered near the mouse but never clicked to close the file. He couldn't explain it, only that something real had happened in that hallway. Something human, wordless, kind, and he needed to know who she was, because people don't just vanish, especially not people who can silence a child's fear with nothing but presence. He looked again, this time closer to the tiny, tilted name tag. He couldn't read it, but he would. He had built companies from nothing, hired detectives for less. This mattered more. Across the city, in a shared room barely warmed by a space heater, Candice King tucked her uniform into a drawer. She didn't know why her heart felt so heavy, why the boy's eyes had stayed with her. She just knew she hadn't expected him to lean in like that. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But he had held on to her for a moment. And something in her had held on, too. Before she went to sleep, she whispered toward the ceiling, "I hope he's okay." She had no idea that someone far away was still watching that moment, rewinding it, memorizing it, and getting ready to rewrite both their lives. Candice King didn't expect the world to reward her, but she also didn't expect it to punish her for being kind. That morning, the alarm on her cracked phone buzzed at 5:30 a.m. She rolled out of bed quietly so she wouldn't wake her grandmother, Martha, who was still asleep in the next room of their tiny two-room dorm-style apartment. The place was cold, like always. Their little radiator hadn't worked right since October, and now December made the floor bite like ice. She rubbed her arms, pulled her faded janitor's sweatshirt over her t-shirt, and slid into the same shoes she wore every day. The soles were coming loose. Outside, the city hadn't woken up yet. Just the orange streetlights flickering on wet sidewalks and the early clatter of buses. She stopped by a convenience store to pick up Martha's favorite herbal tea. It was cheap, but Martha called it luxury in a cup. That always made Candice smile. 12 hours of cleaning. Restrooms, food courts, the back of the holiday display where someone spilled peppermint syrup and crushed candy canes into the tile. Her shoulders ached, her knees throbbed, and her name tag kept twisting sideways no matter how many times she straightened it. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. It wasn't the yelling manager, or the spilled slushie in the bookstore aisle. It was the boy just standing there, small, curly-haired, alone. He was facing a corner wall, breathing fast. His tiny hands fidgeted with the drawstrings of his hoodie. There were people everywhere, but no one saw him. Or if they did, they looked away. Candice didn't think. She didn't ask anyone. She just walked over and sat down beside him. Not too close, not too fast, just close enough for him to feel she was there. First, he flinched. His shoulders tightened like he expected someone to grab him. But she stayed still. She didn't even look directly at him. Only opened a napkin from her back pocket, the one with her doodles, and slowly, carefully drew a stick figure dinosaur. His breathing slowed. A minute passed. Then two. He leaned his head onto her arm. And for the next 10 minutes, they just sat in silence, until a tall man in a black coat rushed toward them like the air itself split open. She gave a small nod, stood, and disappeared down the hallway before anyone could say a word. She didn't think anyone had noticed her name or her face. She certainly hadn't expected anyone to care. But the next day, the call came. At noon, the floor supervisor barked her name through the radio. Candice King. Report to the office. She thought maybe someone had turned in her lost badge. Instead, she was handed a folded paper and told to sign it. What is this? Immediate termination, the supervisor said flatly, not looking up from his clipboard. Termination. Her voice cracked. What for? There was a report filed yesterday. Violation of Code 4B, physical contact with a minor. Mall protocol doesn't allow for staff to engage directly with unaccompanied children, especially without management consent. It's a liability issue. Candice blinked, stunned. He was alone. I didn't even touch him. He leaned on me. He was shaking. The parent is a high-profile individual. His legal team could get involved. Honestly, you're lucky it didn't escalate. We're cutting ties now before it gets worse. Worse? She whispered. I helped him. The man shrugged, like it didn't matter. We can't take chances. Your final payment is included. Just like that, her badge was deactivated. Her locker emptied. Her hours deleted from the next month's schedule. She walked out with a paper bag holding her lunch, a $10 gift card the staff gave her last Christmas, and a half-finished bottle of cleaner she forgot to return. Across the city, Sebastian Roche sat behind his desk in silence. He had just gotten off the phone with Dylan's behavioral therapist. She's the first person outside your family that he's initiated touch with, the woman had said. That's monumental. Do you know who she is? No, he replied. Not yet. He opened his laptop again. Watched the video. Pause. Rewind. Play. The camera quality was terrible. The girl's face never turned fully toward the lens. But her presence, it was unmistakable. She made herself small, soft, invisible. Exactly what Dylan needed to feel safe. He tapped a button on the screen and opened a secure portal. As a major investor in the building's parent company, he had admin-level access to contractor logs. He scanned for cleaning staff assigned to that zone at that time. 3 names. 1 female. C. King. He narrowed his eyes, typed a message to his executive assistant. Find this woman, Candice King. She worked cleaning at Ridge Hall Center yesterday. I want a file in 2 hours. That evening, Candice came home early. Her grandmother looked up from her knitting, surprised. You're back before sunset. That's either a miracle or a disaster. Candice dropped her bag by the door and collapsed into the threadbare chair. Somewhere between. Martha didn't ask questions right away. She poured hot water into a chipped mug and set it beside her. Candice finally spoke. They fired me. What? Martha's voice sharpened. Why? I hugged a kid. Or maybe I didn't. But apparently I shouldn't have been there. Should have looked the other way. Let someone else handle it. Martha leaned back, crossed her arms. You didn't hurt anyone. No. You helped someone. Yes. Then they don't deserve you. Candice stared at the floor. That boy looked at me like I was the only person in the world who saw him. Martha softened. Because you did. Candice didn't sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling while the radiator groaned and the city moaned outside their single-pane window. Across town, Sebastian closed his laptop. He had the name now, Candice King, but no phone number, no address, just a record in a subcontractor's log. He watched the video one last time before bed. The moment Dylan leaned into her, the way her hand trembled before she placed it behind him. Not to hold, but to protect. He turned off the screen and whispered into the dark. "Where did you go?" The next morning, Sebastian didn't go to his office. He went to the mall, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, just as a father. He wore a dark wool coat and walked past the cafe that always overcharged for lattes. Past the fountain where Dylan once dropped a toy car and refused to leave until it was retrieved. Past the security desk, where two guards gave him a stiff nod. He took the elevator to the third floor, the floor where it happened. He walked slowly, pausing at the corner where Dylan had sat with her. The janitor's closet was locked now. The corridor was clean, lifeless. She was gone. Not just dismissed, erased. He found the on-site manager in a glass-walled office, clicking away at a spreadsheet. "I'm looking for a girl," Sebastian said. The manager glanced up and froze. "Mr. Roche, I didn't know you were here today. Would you like a tour of the updated West Wing? I want to talk about what happened with my son and the employee who helped him." The man cleared his throat. "Yes, that. I assure you we followed full protocol. We removed her from the premises to avoid any misunderstandings." Sebastian's jaw tensed. What misunderstanding? She helped him. There were concerns about liability. Touching a minor. She saved him from a meltdown. Even so, your decision was cowardly, Sebastian said. You punished compassion, fired someone for showing decency. And if you think I won't remember that the next time you ask for investment, think again. The manager's face paled. Sebastian left the office without waiting for a reply. He took the elevator down, stepped into the cold, and stood on the street for a moment, unsure what to do next. How do you find someone with nothing but a blurry video, a first name, and a memory? He pulled out his phone. "Claire," he said into the mic, calling his assistant. "Put together a team. I want a list of every Candice King in the city. Start with cleaning services, community colleges, low-income housing lists if you can access them legally." "Understood." "And Claire?" "Yes, sir." "She's not to be harassed. This isn't surveillance. This is personal." That evening, in a small apartment on the east side of the city, Martha opened the window to let in a little air. Candice was lying on the couch, holding a pillow over her chest like armor. Her hair was pulled up, eyes tired. "You sure you don't want to go out and clear your head?" Martha asked. "There's a crafts fair tonight." "With what money? We could just walk." Candice gave a weak smile. "Next time." Martha went back to her crossword. Then something strange happened. A knock at the door. They never got visitors. Candice sat up slowly. "Maybe the landlord?" Martha offered. But when Candice opened the door, there was no landlord, just a clipboard and a courier holding an envelope. "Delivery for Ms. Candice King," the man said. She took it, heart racing. No return address. Inside, a formal letter. It was from a scholarship fund, one she didn't remember applying to, offering full tuition to a local medical assistant certification program, starting in 2 months. Martha looked over her shoulder. "Did you apply for that?" "No," Candice whispered. Attached to the bottom of the letter was a sticky note. In thick, black pen. "People who protect others deserve the chance to protect their future." No name, just the initials SR. Back in his study, Sebastian sipped cold tea and stared at the list of names on his monitor. None of them matched her. Not yet, but she was out there. And now he was certain she wasn't just someone who had helped his son. She was someone who changed something in him, too. The city smelled like frost and roasted chestnuts. Candice wrapped her coat tighter, even though it didn't zip all the way anymore. Martha had convinced her to go outside, just for air. The older woman had said, "You'll grow roots in that couch if you're not careful." So Candice walked. The streets were full of holiday noise. Skaters on makeshift rinks. Kids pressing their noses to candy store windows. A choir singing something cheerful in front of a massive department store tree. She turned into a quieter street. Narrower. Quieter. The kind of street where people didn't rush. It was here that a voice stopped her. "Well, I didn't expect this," said a man behind her. Candice turned and froze. He wasn't in a suit this time. He wore a gray sweater, a charcoal coat, and looked like someone who should have blended into the cold. But he didn't. His presence pulled at the world like gravity. Sebastian Roche. She knew the name now, had seen it in articles, on the sticky note. "I didn't expect to see you," he said again, gentler this time. "Not here." Candice's throat tightened. "Is this a coincidence?" He gave the faintest smile. "Not really. I've been trying to find you." A dozen thoughts raced through her head. What did he want? Was this about the firing? Was she in trouble? "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "People think, your son, what I did." "I know what you did," he said. "You helped him, and I'm sorry no one else saw that." Candice stared at him, stunned by the sincerity in his voice. Behind them, a door opened. A soft voice said, "Dad." They both turned. There he was, Dylan, hood up, holding a sketchbook. Sebastian crouched to meet his son's eye. "I was just about to take a walk with Miss Candice. Want to come?" Dylan looked at her. This time he didn't look away. He stepped forward, carefully, deliberately, and held out his sketchbook. Candice kneeled, her breath catching. "Can I see it?" she asked softly. Dylan opened the book to a blank page. Then he took a pencil from his pocket. He drew quickly, small strokes, gentle ones. Within a minute, a tiny figure appeared. A girl sitting beside a boy. No faces, just outlines. Underneath it, he wrote, in neat, practiced letters, "Her voice makes the world quieter." Candice's eyes welled. "That's beautiful." Dylan didn't speak, but he smiled. And for the first time since that day at the mall, he reached forward and placed his hand in hers. Not because he was afraid, but because he chose to. Later, they sat on a bench beside the bookstore window. Candice held a warm drink from a street vendor. Sebastian held nothing, just watched them. "Why did you really come looking for me?" she asked finally. He hesitated, then said, "Because my son changed the day he met you. And I think I did too." She blinked. "That's a lot to put on a janitor." "It has nothing to do with what you were paid to do," he replied. "It has everything to do with who you are." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. That evening, Candice returned to the apartment. Martha looked up as she entered. "Well, look who got some color in her cheeks." Candice didn't answer right away. She just sat down beside her grandmother and whispered, "I saw him again. The boy. And his father." Martha looked over her glasses. "And they remembered me." Martha poured 2 mugs of tea. "Some people, dear," she said, "aren't meant to be passing moments. They're meant to reroute the whole story." Candice smiled, and didn't say what her heart was already asking. Could this be one of those stories? The boardroom smelled like tension and polished wood. 12 people sat in black leather chairs. Every one of them wore a suit that cost more than most people's rent. Every one of them looked at Sebastian like he'd just brought a bomb to the table. The slides behind him showed plunging numbers. A withdrawal letter from the second largest donor. Screenshots of headlines. Billionaire CEO caught in silent scandal. Who is the girl with Sebastian Roche's autistic son? Security risk or modern fairy tale? Sebastian didn't flinch. He sat at the head of the table, silent, listening. "The foundation is bleeding," said one board member. "Sponsors are pulling out. They're calling her a liability." "She's not part of this company," he said flatly. "Doesn't matter," another chimed in. "She's with you, or she looks like she's with you. That's enough." A woman in a gray pantsuit folded her arms. "You've worked too hard to build your reputation. Are you really going to throw it away for a janitor?" There was silence. Sebastian looked at the screen again, not at the numbers, at the paused image from a video clip. Dylan, sitting in silence. A girl kneeling beside him, her arms around him. The only color in a gray corridor. "You're right," Sebastian said quietly. "I've worked hard." He stood, walked to the window, spoke without turning around. "I've worked hard to build something that meant something, not just to shareholders, not to the press, but to him." He turned, pointing at the screen. "That's my son." And that moment, what she did, was the first time in months he let someone in. One man sighed. "Sebastian." "No," he said. "Let me finish." He walked slowly back to the table. "If protecting her costs us sponsors, we'll rebuild. If it costs me headlines, I'll deal with it. But what I won't do is teach my son that kindness is a liability." Silence fell. Someone shifted uncomfortably. He straightened. "This meeting is over." That night, he sat alone in the garden behind his house. The winter air bit through his sleeves. He didn't care. He looked at the sky, not for answers, but because it reminded him that some things were bigger than this. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire, his assistant. "Found her. She lives in Eastwood. Small apartment. With an older woman, her grandmother." He stared at the screen, and then he smiled. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment 2 subway lines away, Candice stirred her soup and tried not to feel the weight of the world. Martha was at the kitchen table sorting old postcards. She liked to pretend she was organizing, but really she was reliving. "I heard from the food bank today," Candice said. Martha glanced up. "They said someone anonymously donated 10 crates of diapers and formula in my name." Martha smiled. "You really think that's a coincidence?" Candice shook her head. "I don't know what he wants," she whispered, "but I think he means it." Martha put down her postcard. "You helped his boy when no one else did. That's not nothing." Candice stirred the soup harder. "It doesn't mean I belong in his world." "Maybe not," Martha said, "but maybe he wants to belong in yours." Candice stood outside Sebastian's building, her coat clutched tight, the wind pressing through every layer. Her breath fogged in the winter air, but her decision was sharp, clear. She buzzed the intercom. The door opened moments later, not with fanfare or a smile, but with quiet confusion. Sebastian stood there in a soft gray sweater, sleeves pushed up, eyes slightly tired. "You came," he said, as if surprised. Hope flickered behind his voice. Candice looked up, forcing a small smile. "Only for a minute." He stepped aside. She walked in slowly, deliberately. Inside, the space was warm, too warm for someone who felt this cold. Dylan's sketchbook was on the counter. Her throat tightened. "I saw the articles," she began. "The ones dragging your name through the mud. They call me a threat, a stranger, a janitor." Sebastian's jaw tensed. "They're wrong. I know," she said softly. "But you shouldn't have to fight this fight. Not because of me." He shook his head. "Candice, it's not." She held up her hand gently. "Please, let me say this." She took a breath. "You don't have to protect me anymore. Just be a good father to him. That's enough." He stared at her. "You're not a problem I'm trying to solve. You're—" But she was already walking to the door. She didn't want to hear it. Not now. Not when it would only make leaving harder. She paused at the frame, then turned. "You did more than anyone ever has. I'll never forget that. But this isn't my world." And then she was gone. Back in the small dorm room, Martha glanced up from peeling potatoes. "You're home early," she said. Candice gave a vague nod, tossed her coat on the chair, and sat down without a word. Outside, wind scraped at the windows. Her silence said more than any storm. Martha folded her hands. "Did you say what you needed to say?" "I told him it's better if we're not in his life." "And you believe that?" Candice's lips quivered. "No, but it might still be true." They sat in silence for a while, until, knock, knock, knock. Soft, polite, almost shy. Candice blinked. "It's nearly 9 p.m. She stood and opened the door, and froze. There, on the threshold, stood Dylan. Hood up, cheeks red from the cold. Small fingers clutching something in both hands. A drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. Holding hands. A little dog in the background. And above it, "Don't go." That was it. But it was the first sentence he'd ever said to her. Candice's eyes filled. She knelt, arms trembling, and pulled him into a hug. He didn't resist. He leaned into her like he'd done that first day, like the world was quiet again. Behind him, Sebastian stepped into view. He didn't say anything, just waited. Let it be his son's moment. Candice rose slowly. "You brought him here?" "No," Sebastian said. "He asked." "He drew this and waited by the door until I said yes." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt him." "You didn't," he said softly. "You're the first one who didn't." That evening, the small dorm room felt impossibly full in the best way. Sebastian had brought takeout, real food, not frozen pizza. Bowls of soup, roasted vegetables, even a pie. Martha arched an eyebrow as she flipped through her newspaper. "Well," she muttered, "at least one man around here knows how to cook and apologize." Sebastian smiled. Dylan giggled. Candice set the table, hands still trembling slightly. The air smelled like time and something almost like forgiveness. They ate together not as guests and hosts, not as rich and poor, but as something softer, undefined, unspoken. Later, they all sat on the couch, Dylan between them, drawing again. Martha nodded off in her chair. The TV played a quiet film no one really watched. Candice looked at Sebastian. He didn't look back, but his pinky finger gently touched hers. Not claiming, just asking. She didn't move away. The hallway light flickered once. The old dormitory walls creaked with the hush of late night. Inside the room, a single lamp glowed dimly. Candice sat curled under a blanket on the couch, knees tucked to her chest. Martha sat beside her, cross-legged, knitting with soft, worn hands and an expression that hadn't changed in 70 years. The kind that had seen war, winters, and worse, and still knew when silence mattered more than advice. They weren't talking. They didn't need to. The soft whir of the radiator filled the space between breaths. Then, buzz, a vibration on the table. Candice reached slowly. Her phone lit up. One new audio message. From Sebastian. No, wait, from Dylan. Her thumb hovered over the play button. She glanced at Martha. Go on, the older woman whispered. It won't bite. She hit play. A soft click. Then a breath. Then the quiet, trembling voice of a little boy, raw, unpolished, and beautiful in its fragility. You hugged me when I was lost. I'm not lost anymore. Silence. Candice didn't move, didn't blink. Her throat closed up like a fist. She pressed the phone to her chest, like she was holding his heartbeat inside it. Across the couch, Martha gently laid her knitting aside and reached for her hand. Maybe, she said, so quietly the lamp could have missed it, maybe it's time someone took care of you too, sweetheart. Candice smiled through tears she didn't bother to wipe. Outside, the snow fell softly, quiet like a lullaby, and somewhere in that hush, a choice began to form. Not a loud one, not a grand one, just the kind of choice people make when they finally believe they're worth staying for. Morning light filtered through the blinds of the small dormitory kitchen. Martha stirred sugar into her tea, humming a tune older than anyone in the room. Candice was flipping through a worn sketchbook, Dylan's, tracing each drawing like it was a piece of a map she didn't know she needed. Then, a knock. Not urgent, not loud, just sure. Candice opened the door and froze. Standing in the hallway were Sebastian and Dylan, both dressed like they hadn't slept much. Dylan clutched something behind his back. Sebastian held a small set of keys in his hand. For a second, no one spoke. Then Sebastian stepped forward. His voice cracked a little. I didn't plan this. I didn't rehearse anything. I just couldn't sleep knowing there was a door between us. Candice swallowed. What are those? He looked at the keys, then looked at her. They're for the east wing of the house. There's sunlight in the morning and a fireplace that actually works. It's quiet, but not too far from the kitchen. He tried to smile, but his eyes betrayed the truth. He was scared, not of rejection, but of hoping too much. I wanted to say something, he began, then paused. But Dylan stepped forward first. He pulled out the sketchbook from behind his back and opened to the last page. A new drawing. For people on a porch under a movie screen. Blankets. Cocoa mugs. A dog, maybe imaginary. Above it, in careful block letters, Can she live with us? And Grandma too. Candice blinked. Her voice was barely there. Did you draw this last night? Dylan nodded. Sebastian looked at her, suddenly braver. I love you, he said. I tried to pretend it was just kindness, or gratitude, or something I'd get over. But it's none of that. It's you. It's the way you see him. The way you don't try to fix everything. Just hold it until it's less broken. He stepped closer. I don't want a life where you're not home. Silence. Then behind them, Martha coughed pointedly. So, she muttered, arms crossed. Do I get my own wing? Or just a room with a window and a chair that doesn't squeak? Sebastian broke into the first real laugh Candice had ever seen from him. Dylan giggled, and Candice just nodded. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. That evening, the house looked different. not because of decorations or change, but because it was full. The projector glowed softly against a clean white wall. Outside, the stars blinked through the quiet. Inside, four figures sat close, wrapped in shared blankets, fingers around mugs of cocoa, faces lit by the flicker of an old family film. Candice leaned against Sebastian's shoulder. Dylan leaned against hers. Martha munched popcorn with dignified focus, pretending not to smile. For the first time in a long time, no one felt out of place. There was no title for them, no label. But in the middle of the movie, when the hero on screen said, "We found where we belong," Candice whispered, "I've never felt rich until this moment." And no one in the room disagreed.